First thing we're gonna do, we're gonna mute everything else and just leave the drums. Well, we're gonna mute everything and then just have just the kick open. I found out after the recording, well, the day of, there was something going on with the hi-hat. So even though I have a hi-hat track, the track is not sounding good. We had some issues with what it was sounding like. But if you have good overheads and they're placed well, you probably not really gonna miss the hi-hat, especially in this style of music. I mean, even though the hi-hat is crucial, we're still able to get that from the overheads. But when we get to the overheads, you're gonna be able to hear and see what I'm talking about. Let's start with the kick. So for kick, it's a Behringer Dynamic TG71 mounted inside the kick with a Kelly shoe. All right, so this is what the kick sounds like. Okay, so the first thing I typically would do, for me, the first thing I typically would do is I would, I know people find it strange, but I'll do a low cut or a high pass just to clean up some of the low end. So you can, even though the drums is caged, you can still kind of hear the room a bit coming in. You know, there's a bass cabinet close to where the drums are, so you can hear some of that. So we're gonna do a low pass, a high pass low cut, and we're doing that around 40, okay? So let's take a listen to what that sounds like. This is with, this is without. Now, when I engage it, listen to what happens. Do you hear that? The kick feels it's coming forward and more focused. Without, that's without, and that's with. So it's almost like you get a tighter kick, you get a more focused sound, okay? EQ wise, what are we thinking? Usually I try to find something in the low mid that sounds like a basketball, something in the high mids, take those out, and then depending on what that sounds like, I'll put some top end and maybe some low end just to get more punch and more attack. So let's start by taking out some of the stuff we don't like. Let's find our frequency. Right there, I personally don't like that. Some people might, but I personally don't like that. So we're gonna take that out. Listen to that without and with. So you see the kick is starting to take its definition. Let's find something in the high mids that we don't like. You see what that sounds like? Sounds like a basketball. I don't want that. So let's take that out. So just right now, you're hearing the definition of the kick in this case. Without the EQ, with the EQ, EQ in but no high pass. See, it's almost like you lose that focus on the kick. So the EQ is still engaged. Let's bring back the high pass. So we like that right there. Now let's go to the top end. Let's see if we can find, oh, that right there feels good, but let's keep checking. I like this right here, but let's go back to the first thing we had. That's around 7K thereabout. And then let's go back to, I'm kind of torn. I like both. I'm probably gonna leave it around 7K right now. And that might change when I bring all the other elements in. When I bring in the drums, when I bring in the bass, you know, if I feel like I'm missing the attack of the kick, we might pick a different frequency. But I think for now, I'll leave it around 7K. Let's take a look at the low end. Let's see if we can get some punch and some roundness. I can live with that. If I take that away, let's bring it back in. Without, EQ without, with. So I'm gonna keep that right there for now. You know, we're trying to make quick decisions. We're not trying to spend 20 minutes on the kick. We're trying to make quick decisions and move on, because remember, we're trying to build a mix. You have the drummer playing, you have a band on stage. You don't want them to be waiting for too long and get restless, okay? Let's take a look at our compressor. I usually do 4-to-1. I'm just gonna touch it a bit and you know, I already have some of the settings down because I already mixed this before, just so that we don't have this video super long. But 4-to-1, a medium, slightly fast but not too fast attack. And then let's try and get it to release a little bit quicker. And I'm doing the makeup game without. So there's some punch in there. We'll probably listen a little of punch, and we might have to adjust maybe the attack to get that back. Without the compressor. With. I just feel like I get a more controlled kick in this case. Without and with. So that's the kick right there. Let's move on to the snare, and then we'll come back and see what's going on. You know, we'll start to add stuff in, but let's go to the snare real quick. So snare, we're gonna clean up some of the low stuff that we don't need. High pass engaged, around 100. Okay. Now, let's find the stuff we don't like in the snare. All that boxiness, let's get rid of it. I don't like that, so I'm going to take that away. Bypass EQ. EQ engaged. So you just seem to get a little bit more focused sound, okay? Let's see, what do we want to do with the top end? Do we want to do a high shelf? Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so maybe we'll try a Q first. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, we're getting a little bit more of the crack with that Q, around 5K thereabout, 5-6K. Oh, by the way, forgot to mention, snare was recorded with a SC Electronic V7X. That's what we use for the snare in this case. Okay, without the EQ. Let's bring in the EQ. Doesn't sound bad. You know, you get more of the crack. You get rid of all the noise and the muddiness, and you get more of the crack. Compressor, we're doing a 4-to-1, a medium attack, medium release. Let's bring that in. There you go. Let's bring in kick and snare. I typically don't gate my snares because of the ghost notes. You don't want to miss some of those things, so I try to avoid gating my snare so I don't miss those things. So that's your kick and snare. Let's take a look at the snare reverb real quick. So I am using the same reverb for both the drums, for all the drums. Because I'm on an M32, I only have 4. Well, I have an option of 4 reverbs. So what I tend to do is I use one for the drums, I use one for the background singers, I use one for the lead, and I have a delay. So in this case, we're using what we call the ambience in this case. So let's bring the return of that. Let's see what that sounds like. Let me exaggerate the reverb of the snare. That's what it sounds like. Without. So it just adds some space around the snare. With. So you see, it's not so in your face, but you can hear the space. Without. With. Just add a little space, and that's all we really need, okay? We're gonna go to the overheads. So I prefer, usually when I'm trying to build my drum sound, I try to go kick, snare, overhead. If there's a hi-hat, I add the hi-hat, because I believe like that gives me the full picture of the kit. And then I can go back in and add the toms. So let's mute the kick and snare, bring in overheads. So if you listen, obviously you can hear the bass from outside. You hear the kick in there, you hear the snare, you can hear the hi-hat. Remember what I said about the hi-hat, not having a hi-hat mic, but the overheads in this case are the SC Electronics SC8 stereo pair, you know, so that's over the kit. And you can actually hear, the hi-hats on there. You hear the snare, you can hear the toms. Let's put a high pass filter. So that's around 140. It's cleaning up, you know. Yeah, you still have the bass a little bit, but without the high pass, listen. The kick is in there. You hear more of the bass also. Let's bring the high pass in. So that just helps us clean it up a bit. That's what we're doing right there. We're cleaning up some of the stuff that we don't need. Now, obviously, you're gonna hear the toms, but it's not gonna be pronounced in your face. You still hear the snare, and it's important because the snare, sorry, I forgot to mute the reverb, because we're hearing the reverb there. So I just muted the reverb right now. But yeah, you're hearing the snare, you're hearing the toms. The toms is not so much in your face, but you're getting a good picture of the kit, okay? And when you position your overheads right, that actually also changes the sound of your snare. All right, let's try and get out the muddiness and stuff that we don't like from there. I'm looking for some harshness and, you know, high mid stuff that I don't like. Without the EQ, it's not a drastic change, but it's enough to make a change that it cleans up what you're hearing. With the EQ, you still hear the hi-hats, you can hear the cymbals, you still hear the snare, you still hear the toms. Let's bring in the kick and snare with that. I'm gonna bypass the overheads. I'm gonna mute the overheads right there and see what the snare sounds like by itself. You hear that? Overheads coming back in. Without overheads. With overheads. So it almost feels like the snare sounds bigger. Let's bring in the reverbs. All right, let's do some compression on the overheads. We're gonna go 4-2-1. A medium attack. A little bit of a release, and then we're gonna do hard knee. What I'm looking for to trigger my overheads for me is the snare, because usually the snare is gonna be the loudest thing in the overheads. And I'm probably looking for anywhere between 2 to 5 dB of compression, preferably 4 dB, 2 to 4 dB. Without the compression on the overhead. With. Okay, so we got the kick, got the snare, we got the overheads in. Let's try and find out where they're playing some toms so we can try and get that in, dialed in quickly. All right, we're gonna start with the second tom. Remember, the goal is to try and move quick, so we're gonna try and move quick. Second tom. So it's a 8, 10, 12, and a 16 floor tom. The mics on the 8 is a Sennheiser E604. On the 10, 12, and 16 floor tom is a AC Electronic V-Beat, okay? So this is the V-Beat right now. This is on the 10-inch tom. Let's find the mod that we don't like. Stuff that sounds like basketball, all that boxiness. Yeah, let's take that out. Let's find the... See, I feel like I'm getting the true tone of the toms right there. Let's try and maybe bring a little bit more attack on there. Now you gotta be careful because you bring that up, you also bring up the cymbals and stuff. Now let's see, if I bring in some of the fundamentals, does that help? So that might be just too much. So maybe just do a little bit. Without. So maybe I don't need the fundamental in this case. In the mix, I might need it. Gate-wise, because there are toms, I want to kind of keep all the noise away. So we already have a gate set up. Let's just activate that and see. So depending on what's happening, sometimes I would find a frequency and maybe use a frequency to trigger. If you have enough channels, maybe using a external trigger to trigger your toms. You know, you attach a trigger to your tom and use that as a sidechain to trigger your toms. You could do that. But in this case, I'm just gonna do the natural gate. I'm not gonna go too deep into anything extra. We're just gonna see what that looks like in the mix. If we feel like it's sounding too choppy with the cymbals and stuff, then we'll probably wanna come in and adjust the gate, or maybe try to use a frequency, the fundamental frequency of the tom to trigger the gate. Compressor wise, same concept, 421, just kind of catch it so you can kind of keep it contained. And then of course you're also hearing it with the reverb, because I left the reverb on. If I take out the reverb, this is what it sounds like dry. So that's what it sounds like dry. Let's bring the reverb back in. So that's what you have on the second tom. Let's see what other toms are playing that we can treat. Okay, we got the floor tom. We're gonna try and move quick on that. Remember, we have musicians waiting on stage. High pass. Let's find the stuff we don't like and get rid of it. You can probably see with the toms, I'm going to the same frequency, same range, same area. Everybody's ears is going to be different. You might be close, you might be off, but you got to listen to, you have to listen for what's going on with the drums and figure out what you don't like, what you need to take away, what you might need to add to get you the sound and the tones you're looking for. I prefer to hear my drum sound natural. Thankfully, the clients I work with have trusted me to be able to give them what sounds good for them. So I try to find something that sounds natural and sounds like what the instrument sounds like when I'm standing in front of it. In this case, I feel like I need to boost the fundamental a little bit so I can get the toms to cut through. And let's add some top end. I'm gonna add some attack just to kind of help it a bit. So this is with EQ. Without EQ, I still have the high pass engaged. Okay, so definitely sounds better. Let's bring in the gate. Same situation, we've already kind of dialed it, copy and paste and then tweak. And then compressor. Okay, now let's find the floor tom. Let's see. High pass engaged. Let's get some muddy stuff out. Don't like that right there. Remember, the goal is to try and move quick. With EQ, without EQ. So the tone still sounds very similar, sounds very natural to what we're getting, but we just cleaned out the stuff we don't like and giving a little bit of help to get some of the tone that we like to kind of poke out a little bit more. With EQ, gate. Let's add the compressor in there. Okay, let's try and see if we can find the first tom, if the first tom is playing somewhere here. Let's find out real quick. Okay, let's read that real quick. So remember that's a 8-inch with a Sennheiser high pass. That cleans up a lot. Let's find what we don't like. Sounds good already. And then a little bit of top end. Let me see if I can find the fundamental. Let me see if that would help a bit. I actually like what that sounds like. Without the EQ. With EQ. And then let's go to the gate. Okay, compressor. Same concept that everything we've done with other toms. All right. Let's find a loop that has all the toms. Panning wise, I try to pan my toms and my drums from FOH view. So you're gonna have your hi-hats a little bit more to your right, looking at stage, your floor tom to your left. You're gonna have, try to look at the tom. So if it's an 8, 10, 12, you're gonna hear your toms going from right to left. So wherever the toms are placed is where I'm gonna pan it. So that's what we're listening to right now. Okay, kick, snare with that, and overheads. So that's what we have right there with drums.